destiny.
Kratos' time in the Norse realms is coming to a close in the upcoming God of War Ragnarok, but that doesn't mean that he still doesn't have plenty of adventuring left in store for him. Quite the opposite, in fact, as God of War Ragnarok is likely to be the largest God of War game with all 9 realms to explore this time around, and, for the purpose of this video, characters to meet and potentially go to battle with. Unlike the Greek saga for Kratos, the story is given a greater importance in the Norse saga of the God of War games, evidenced by God of War 2018's focus on Kratos transitioning to a new period in his life, trying to be a good, responsible father to his son who hasn't fully realized his godly powers yet. It was a fascinating dynamic that paid off brilliantly throughout the game's large campaign, and we were also treated to an awesome cast of characters along the way, with Freya, Mimir, Baldur, and Brock and Sindri, just to name a few.
Shut your mouth, is that?
Although this relatively small cast of characters played crucial roles to the story in the previous game, players were left scratching their heads as to where the other big names in Norse mythology were in the game. As God of War Ragnarok is indeed a finale to Kratos' epic bout in the Norse realms, we have confirmation that a significant number of new characters will be introduced in God of War Ragnarok, and presumably many, many more to follow. Join me as we take a closer look at the characters we know we will come to see during Kratos' next adventure in this introduction to the supporting cast of God of War Ragnarok.
Tyr! Are you coming with us?
Tyr, the Norse god of war. When you think God of War, do Ares or Kratos pop inside your mind? Like the brutish, deadly, and rage-filled gods that we have come to know in God of War's saga in ancient Greece? If so, prepare for quite a departure with Tyr, as this Norse god of war is known to be more in line with law, justice, and the formalities of war itself, rather than relishing in the bloodshed. Tyr is quite different to Kratos, as his demeanor is more subdued, and is known to be one of the most trustworthy of the Norse gods. Although Tyr may be known for his honor and integrity in trying to prevent acts of war, don't be fooled by his stature and personality, as Tyr is very much a strong force to reckon with. In legend, Tyr is known to be the one who binds Fenrir, more on him in a moment, and loses his hand to Fenrir as to reassure the massive beast that he is not being tricked. As we can see from the God of War Ragnarok story trailers, both of Tyr's hands are still very much intact, which may lead us to believe that Fenrir hasn't yet been bound. As Kratos relates to the events of God of War Ragnarok, and he is indeed a god of war, do you think Tyr and Kratos' fate could be seen interchangeable in regards to the myths? Just a thought. Getting back to Tyr, it will be interesting to see how his character develops over the story, and if he and Kratos were to ultimately share a lot more similarities than their perceived differences. Now, we talked briefly about Fenrir, but I'd like to go into this iconic beast of a wolf in more detail here, so as to hopefully help you understand some of the basic knowledge about this iconic figure. Fenrir is the son of Loki, who happens to be Atreus and Angerboda's beautiful baby. Angerboda, I'm not too sure about the pronunciation of Angerboda, but it seems like the devs are calling her Angerboda, so you can go to war in the comments section about how to properly pronounce Angerboda. Now, I'm not going into the speculation in this video as to how Atreus, or Loki, has children, of which, in Norse myth, Loki has many, but perhaps I will cover that in a future video. Now, getting back on track. Fenrir faced an unprecedented amount of growth while growing up and being raised by the Aesir gods. Due to his alarming rate of growth, the Aesir gods became wary of Fenrir and tried to tie him down in the hopes of preventing Fenrir from enacting massive destruction throughout the 9 realms. Some gods convinced Fenrir that the binding of the wolf was designed to test the beast's strength, and used this guise to try to fool the wolf. After a few attempts, Fenrir glanced at the gods and thought to himself, "These people are sus," and declared that he refused to be bound unless the hand of a god were to be stuck in his mouth for reassurance. Tyr, of course, volunteers to put his hand in Fenrir's mouth, accepting that he may no longer have his hand with him. And just like that, as Fenrir was unable to escape the binding of the gods this time around, he bit Tyr's hand clean off his arm. Well, I don't know about the clean part, but this is how we know Tyr loses his hand. And what makes it interesting in the representation of Tyr in the trailer is he is seen to still have both his hands intact. During Ragnarok, Fenrir is known to break free of his chains and run throughout the 9 realms, devouring everything in sight and even killing the mighty Odin himself. Fenrir is said to have been finally taken down by Odin's son, Vidar, to avenge the death of his father. Fenrir will no doubt be a key figure in God of War Ragnarok, as he is clearly spotted here in this short trailer, and has been spoken about in great length in the previous game. Major props to the team at Santa Monica Studio for designing probably the coolest rendition of this mythical beast to date. Before we go further, I'd like to talk about this video's sponsor, likes. That's right, good people. If you would kindly Spartan kick that like button, it would greatly help me out by pushing this video out to more people and help us win the war against the YouTube algorithm. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're loving the content so far. You all seriously rock, and thank you for your continued support, good people. Now, let's see if we can get this video over 500 likes.
You'll get your answers soon enough. Well, some of them.
A giantess, a Jotun. Angerboda is the lover of Loki, and is the mother to 3 key figures in Norse myth. Fenrir, as discussed earlier, Jormungandr, also known as the World Serpent, and Hel, the ruler of the dead. Very little is known about Angerboda, although it is rather revealing that her name in Old Norse translates to the one who brings grief. In God of War Ragnarok, she may serve as a key figure in aiding Kratos and Atreus. She is, after all, the lover of Loki. I'd love to go into more information regarding Angerboda, but there just isn't enough info about her to make lasting assumptions. So I'll turn this one over to you, good people. What do you think Angerboda's relationship with Kratos and Atreus is going to be in God of War Ragnarok? Sound off below in the comments. Another figure that doesn't need much mention is the mighty Thor himself. Perhaps the most recognized of all the Norse gods, Thor and his hammer, the Mjolnir, represent strength and power. Thor's straightforward and steadfast personality further embellishes this icon of power. The defender of the Aesir gods of Asgard, Thor is looked up to as a fierce warrior, a warrior that many aspiring warriors aspire to be. Thor has a strong disliking to the World Serpent, and it is well written in Norse myth that these two are destined to end each other's lives in a harrowing battle. As we can see in the most recent story trailer, this fight with Thor takes place over the frozen Lake of the Nine. Is the World Serpent hidden beneath the frigid ice, waiting to strike at Thor? Only time will tell, but expect Thor to be a boss that could possibly take place over many encounters throughout the game. Getting that Mjolnir would be mighty fine as well. Like dwarves?
Last time I saw one, I could still get rigid down south.
Well, we got one more in Durlin. Durlin is a smith and craftsman, like Brock and Sindri, although we don't know how capable this new dwarf is compared to those two. As to how major a role Durlin is likely to play in God of War Ragnarok is unknown, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Durlin act in a similar way to Brock and Sindri. Perhaps he will have his own quest line and reward Kratos and Atreus with some awesome weapon upgrades and armor throughout the game. We see his awesome octopus-like pet shimmering about him in the first story trailer for the game, and I'm sure this pet is going to be a fan favorite when the game launches. What do you think Durlin's role is going to be in God of War Ragnarok? Lastly, we have the Allfather, the big boy himself, Odin. Mimir has spoken of Odin in an almost fearful way, as this powerful god is known to be the most powerful of them all, and with such power, tries to hide that very fact by often disguising himself so as not to reveal his true identity. Odin never showed his face in God of War 2018, and although we see the silhouette of what is likely to be Odin in this new God of War Ragnarok story trailer, we can assume he is hiding much more than his godly power under those robes at Kratos' doorstep. Odin, being the Allfather, is said to have a watchful eye on everything around him, as everything and everyone is under constant surveillance. Atreus is very in tune to those around him, both the seen and the unseen, and it is though Atreus is well aware that something out there, some force, is keeping watch of him. How Atreus responds to Odin, and as his godly powers develop throughout the course of God of War Ragnarok, is going to be an interesting development to follow. As Atreus is indeed Loki, how will Atreus come to terms with his powers? Will he practice these powers in private, away from his father's critical eye? As the god of mischief himself, I expect grand revelations to happen with Atreus throughout the game, and he may have a lot more knowledge of the Allfather than Kratos may know what to do with. And that about wraps up this video as an introduction to many of the brand new characters being introduced to God of War Ragnarok. Expect more content regarding God of War Ragnarok as we get closer to its release. Hard to believe the game will be coming out next month, am I right? I hope you enjoyed this video and insight into the Norse myths surrounding these new characters, so I'd love it if you pump that like button and subscribe to the channel if you loved it. Go ahead and view this video here if you want even more insight into the legends surrounding the events of Ragnarok itself, as this could give us a good look at what to expect during the first few hours of the game. Again, thank you all good people for the support, and I look forward to seeing you all real soon. Take care out there. Peace.